Today, I'm going to talk about why every bass player needs a preamp. Hey, it's James here from eBass Guitar. We help bass players start playing at 50 and beyond. Today, I'm going to break down the 4-point signal chain that shapes your bass guitar sound so you can get a better tone, and explore why so many bass guitar players choose to carry an external preamp like the SansAmp Bass Driver DI or the Aguilar Tone Hammer pedal or the Mark Bass Vintage preamp. Here's the thing, every bass player already uses a preamp. I'm going to show you why in a second, but the question becomes, do you need one as a pedal too? Let's find out. Just to give you a quick teaser, at the end of this video, I'm going to jam using all three of the pedals in front of me so you can hear and appreciate some of the differences. Just before we get going, I've got a freebie for you. If you want a simple guide to essential bass gear, grab my free Bass Gear Basics guide. I put a link to that in the description below, which you can download completely free. Let's crack on. Every bass player, whether they know it or not, already uses a preamp. It's built into your amplifier, and understanding the 4-point signal chain will show you how this works and help you understand if you want to add an external preamp as a pedal too. So let's take the 4-part signal chain apart. There are 4 elements to this. The first one is the input, and in the case of the bass guitar, this is the bass guitar pickups. The second part is the preamp. This shapes our tone and gives a signal boost. And typically, this is the part of the amplifier which has a lot of knobs on it. Then the third part is what's called the power amp. This is the muscle or the volume. And typically, this only has one knob to control it. You may have a 100-watt amplifier, you may have a 500-watt amplifier, you may have 1,000 or beyond. But this is where the watts live. And then the final part of this is the speakers, which reproduce what we hear. This 4-point signal chain is absolutely everywhere. If you go to a big gig, it will be the microphone for the singer, the mixing desk at the back of the room, the big amplifiers at the side of the stage, and the speakers hanging down. You'll see it everywhere. Now, let's put the bass down for a second. If you go back to the 1980s, there was this huge fashion to have separate preamps and separate power amps. You'll see manufacturers such as Trace Elliot and SWR doing that. But fast forward 20, 30 years, you rarely ever see that. What's popular now is having the amplifier, the preamp and the power amp all in one unit, which is what you can see over there. And then this goes down to separate speakers below. Over here, I have my combo amplifier, which has all 3 elements in one. It has the preamp, the power amp, and the speaker. The basic difference between these 2 rigs is this has a lot more components and this is a lot more portable. So inherently, there's more flexibility here, but there's more simplicity here. Which one you choose is completely up to you and the playing situations that you work in. So preamps have always been an essential part of any amplifier. But what started happening in the 70s, most notably with the company Music Man, is they started putting small circuits or preamps in the back of bass guitars to get more bass guitar tones. Here is an example of one. Previously, you had very simple circuitry. Now you'd have whole circuit boards like this mounted in the back of the instrument. Let me give you a quick demonstration. This is my Sadowski, and it has an active preamp in it. So I'm going to show you this bass in passive mode with no circuitry in it, and I'm going to play the riff. Now I'm going to engage the circuit, and you can hear this difference. It's added more bass and more treble, so you get a fuller sound, which some players really love. The other advantage of having it on the instrument is it's very easy to get to tweak from song to song. And typically, this is how I use active circuitry on a bass guitar. Let's move into the 80s and early 90s. Most notably, the company SansAmp figured out that into a small pedal unit, you could build a piece of circuitry which emulated the sound of a massive Ampeg SVT stack. This gave really portable tone shaping, which musicians could then start taking in their gig bags to recording studios and to theatre pits to get many, many more bass tones and emulate actually using an amplifier. So moving into the mid-2000s, what started happening is pretty much every amp manufacturer and pedal manufacturer started creating pedals so they could have their particular tone and sound in a portable unit players could take into theatre pits and recording studios. So you'll discover them from manufacturers such as EBS through to David Eden, Ampeg through to Aguilar to Mesa Boogie. They all started doing them. The other big shift which happened in the mid-2000s is rather than using analog circuitry in pedals, digital amp modeling came along, where multiple amplifiers could be reproduced in one unit. So companies such as Line 6, Fractal, and Kemper started creating these units where you could get an Ampeg, an Aguilar, a Mesa, a GK amp, an acoustic, and an orange amp, all in one unit to recreate the particular sounds of that manufacturer. So let's shift forward to today. Why are players using preamp pedals and why are they so super popular right now? Here's my take on it. Over the last 10 years, there has been a massive shift away from traditional amplifier systems like this to in-ear monitors. And often the amplifier is completely gone. So you will see what's called silent stages. So how do you get the sound of your favorite amplifier and also give yourself more control when you're on stage? And that's to use a preamp pedal. And that is the number one reason why I use particularly the SansAmp bass driver DI on stage. So right now I have the SansAmp bass driver version 2 preamp, which sits on my pedal board all of the time and is essentially a very high quality DI box with some equalization and volume controls on here. I love this unit and I particularly love the version 2 when they added the mid-range control to it. Next up, I have the Aguilar Tone Hammer preamp pedal here. Effectively, this is a pedal version of my Tone Hammer 500 amplifier out here, which is my choice of amp for larger gigs. Then finally, I also own the Mark Bass Vintage Pre, which is very loosely based on the circuitry which is in my Mark Bass combo. But what this has done is trying to emulate, or it is emulating, valve tones, which is great for more old school sounds. So guys, we're halfway through the video now and I've got a quick favor to ask. If you're enjoying this video and you're not subscribed to the eBass Guitar YouTube channel, please can you hit the red subscribe button somewhere around this video, because every single week we release a new video to help bass guitar players just like you get going playing better bass and understanding your gear. So please hit the red subscribe button somewhere around this video. So what I want to do is show you these pedals in action now. What I'm going to do is I'm going to have the active preamp on the bass guitar, but I'm going to have all of the bass and treble off, which is typically how I run this. Then I set up my basic sound and my basic DI to the PA on the SansAmp bass driver DI. So this is the flat sound. Then I'm just going to add in the SansAmp bass driver DI now for a little bit of sparkle. So it adds a little bit more life to the sound, but also just gives me some precise control on physical knobs when I'm on a gig that I can get to. Now, the other two preamps I've got here are the Mark Bass Vintage Pro here. And where I like this particular preamp, I'm going to turn off the SansAmp for now, and then I'm going to put it on flat at this moment in time, the flat setting. Then I'm going to put it into old school mode. And this is what it sounds like. It gives you this really warm 60s kind of sound. So a different vibe there. So let's kick that out. So let's kick in the Tone Hammer. And I want to show you a really important feature of all three of these particular pedals right now. So this is what it sounds like with the Tone Hammer engaged. Real classic Aguilar punchy sound there, but it has this adaptive gain circuitry, which is essentially a distorted sound where they overdrive the preamp. So let's hear that. So if you want a more aggressive sound, this is the way to get it. But all three of these pedals can also function as distortion or overdrive pedals too. So actually chaining these together can give you a bunch of different sounds if that's what you want on the gig. So I'm going to have a jam now so you can hear more of these pedals in action with a drum track. But loosely, how I'm using them is I'm using the SansAmp bass driver version 2 as my bass tone. I'm going to use the Aguilar for a more distorted sound, and then I'm going to use the Mark Bass Vintage Pro as a more old school sound. And I'm also going to try experimenting putting them all together to see what the heck we get. So let's listen to this flat. 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's add in the bass driver DI. 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's add in the tone hammer with the adaptive gain circuitry on. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now let's swap in the Mark Bass Vintage Preamp for an old school sound. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, what the heck? Let's just put all three of them on and see what happens. Finally, let's just go back to the SansAmp bass driver DI, which is my core tone. So let's get to the nitty-gritty. Do you really need a preamp? Yes, every player needs a preamp as part of their amplifier setup. It's absolutely crucial. But do you need an external one? If you're a beginner or early phases player starting out, absolutely not. What's on your amplifier is totally fine. But if you're going into being more of a creative player, gigging or recording, or you have a specific tone problem that you want to sort out, or a particular sound that's in your head, an external preamp can be really useful to get a more fine level of control. And typically that's what I use it for on gigs. So my honest takeaway is it's not essential, but it can be a ton of fun if you choose to start investing and looking into these particular tools. Let me give you one final tip. If you're looking to explore preamps, the best thing I can recommend is to go to a music store and try an active bass guitar and see if having bass, treble and mid controls on your instrument actually gives you the flexibility that you're looking for. Then after that, start looking into preamp pedals. So guys, that's the end of today's video. If the concepts we've covered have piqued your curiosity and you want to discover more about preamps and tone shaping, there are two videos I would love you to check out on our channel. The first is the recent review I did of the Tech 21 SansAmp bass fly rig pedal. It takes a lot of the technology that we've covered today and takes it a step further with more tone shaping tools. The next is my rig rundown video from working with the Celine experience, where you can see my pedal board and how I use it live. So check those videos out. I'll put them somewhere around this screen and I'll also put links to them in the description below. Cheers, I've been James from ebassguitar.com. I'll catch you next week.